We've just got to the end of the first day of questioning of the undercover police officer, Jim Boyling. Cover name, Jim Sutton. Code name, Psycho Dream. HN14, the undercover officer who infiltrated East London Animal Rights, East London and Essex Hunsabs, Earth First, Reclaim the Streets. He deceived 3 women into intimate sexual personal relationships, having 2 children with one of them. We just concluded, Dave Barr was doing the questioning, the counsel to the inquiry. He just concluded the end of the day, as he likes to, with a bit of a cliffhanger, going into the details of the beginning of the sexual relationship that Jim Boyling had with Monica, about how he had every opportunity to not do that. I think he very successfully tied Boyling up in a number of knots, where Boyling was trying to claim that, that it was, he thought she was nice, and that, he didn't accept that she wouldn't necessarily have not slept with him if she'd known he was an undercover officer, which was a shocking line, and an audible gasp came across the room when he said that. It was put to him that, she has said that she would have never slept with him if she knew he was an undercover officer, to which he started to try and argue, and then went, no, if she says that, I don't dispute. Really gross. I mean, it's always gross when we have those sections at the inquiry where an undercover officer attempts to justify the unjustifiable. He was asked about consent. He doesn't appear to understand what consent means. Barr delivered like the line, "What would it have taken to stop you?" Which, was just, Boyling had nothing. He had nothing. You put out of his misery would a stronger management line have helped? To which he said, they'd have to do a lot more. It was so incredibly difficult. I felt I had no choice. When a nice woman kisses a young man doesn't run away, and other just utter shite. He eventually admitted that sex and cover, as Barr put it, was his motivation. What did you make of the evidence? I'm joined by Jay Jordan of Reclaim the Streets, and Matt Salisbury, regular of this parish, who hasn't been for a while. Jay, what did you make of the evidence?
He's Psycho Dream. He's a psychopath. He clearly, he has this whole thing constantly of like saying that he lived the role. He begins his witness statement with, this whole thing is some kind of existential exercise to try and live a life that he hadn't lived. And then he has this whole thing. And since he divorces his wife, then he lives the life full time. And then therefore he even talks about, being in meetings where he's suddenly thinking, oh, we're going to get in trouble if the police find out, and then go, oh, but I am a police officer. Of course, they know everything. It's so hard to tell what, the guy has been trained to lie. He's lying clearly in the inquiry. He's lying to himself. He's lying to everyone.
It was very telling, that particular bit where it was put, where he was saying that, he'd lost himself in the role. And then it was put to him, well, you were going to SDS meetings twice a week. And he went, oh, no. During the busy times, I was going every single day to SDS meetings. So, he must have had a fair idea of who he was.
Yeah. I think the thing that came out that I was particularly interested in was the whole much social justice, public order stuff. So, he's, in a way, he's clearly saying that, RTS was not, at one level he's saying, it was not a public order issue. It was about temporary autonomous zones. He used the term temporary autonomous zones. I never thought I'd see a cop use that term. And then he's saying, well, actually, it was number one public order issue for Special Branch. We were the public enemy number one for Special Branch in terms of public order. And I think what I'm glad came out, but I don't think what they could have done is actually bring out more of the discussion around the March social justice issue. So what it turns out, he says, at one point in March social justice, he gets a phone call from SDS saying that the Home Secretary has decided to not let us, and he kept using we and us, and that was really disturbing, because he's a core organizer, so he's using we when talking about Reclaim the Streets instead of they. It's like fucked up. But yeah, the Home Secretary decides on the eve of general election it's not okay for an anarchist group to occupy, even though it's an empty government building, in the lead up to general election in Westminster. So he says that's what stopped us. That's what made the decision. But it doesn't talk about that whole discussion, which was really interesting in the evidence, which is all about, should we let them do it or should we not let them do it? And they had a long discussion and, saying inevitably, if we don't let them do it, there will be disorder.
It was quite interesting, I thought, when he was asked about the disorder that happened in Trafalgar Square as a result of the occupation not taking place. He very quickly started talking about what was in the tabloid newspapers the next day. And he had to be reminded by Barr that he was being asked questions as an eyewitness, not for someone who read the tabloids the next day. And then he just was desperately kind of thrashing around, trying to think of things that were disorderous that he witnessed himself. And he didn't have a great deal. No. There was a police van in the crowd, and he thought, oh, he's going to have a hard time getting out. Great.
Yeah.
Is all he got.
And the police van in the crowd is a classic police tactic,
Yes. Matt, what did you make of the evidence?
Well, there was a lot of stuff about the M41 street party. There was the plan around a petrol tanker on the Dartford Bridge.
Yes.
There were other incidents, and the sort of some arrests in between. It was interesting about him being arrested and being charged. Didn't think he was going to be charged, and then he's handing over his lawyer's letters to the SDS, and he's questioned in some detail about did he realise that this was legal privilege, and had he had any training about what to do about privileged documents. And he apparently did a law degree before so it's kind of surprising that he didn't know anything about legal privilege. And there was a lot I was particularly interested in about this, which Jay's touched on, about he was reporting that we shouldn't, the police shouldn't stop Reclaim the Streets achieving their primary objective of having a static street party in a space and then dispersing and everyone could go home. And that it often used to kick off when people weren't able to disperse, or they prevented them from dispersing at the end. And it seems on at least one occasion, he's feeding all this intelligence which is supposed to be passed on to the uniform police, and it's ignored. And then, of course, there's, as Jay's touched on, there's the intervention apparently from the Home Secretary saying we're not going to let them take the Department of Environment. And there seems to be a lot of intel from him and others saying let them, the best thing we can do is let them have this, do this event, and then everyone can go home. And that's ignored on several occasions.
Yeah,
so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, very blatantly. Just quickly, we've got 44 people watching. Only 2 of you have liked it. I know it's very cheesy to ask, but please, if you'd like and share that. It's awful. I feel so cringe every time I do this, but it does appear to work. It makes a huge difference to how many people see these broadcasts. If you are able to share it, really make a difference. One of the things we heard a lot about from him, which I just seemed absolutely ridiculous, was the internal turf war that existed between Special Branch and CO11. Now, CO11 ran forward intelligence teams, which, I mean, anybody who was involved in activism in the late 90s and 2000s will remember very well. They used to, irritate the shit out of everyone pretty much. And there was, I think I gave a lot of people, it was it was really stressful for a while. You just get followed everywhere by these fucks. Now, he's actually said that the Special Branch didn't trust CO11 with any intelligence because they feared that they would intentionally expose an undercover officer. It sounds absolutely unbelievable.
Well, they used the term turf war, and I think we're going to see another turf war between the Metropolitan Police and the City Police coming up.
Sure.
It was super surprising. And at the same time, as you say, I think CO11's fit teams did, if the whole aim of policing is to actually make people scared of getting involved in social movements. I witnessed several situations where people had never been to activist meetings, came to their first active meeting, had to go through a gauntlet of CO11 fit officers with their extra large cameras. You know, they could have had tiny cameras. They always had extra large cameras and extra large flashes and these weird contraptions when they could have been done it with tiny things. You know, it was a piece of police theatre to basically intimidate people,
and it was more than just cameras. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize how much, you know, they got to know who you were. And I mean, so I mean, for example, on a personal note, I remember being followed to visit my grandmother after a demonstration by the FIT team. She was in a nursing home at the time. The next time, sometime later, FIT team came up to me, and not after my grandmother had died, going, "How's your grandmother? How's your grandmother? How's your grandmother?" I mean, it was they used every little trick in the book in order to really try and do everything they could, really, to intimidate you out of activism. It was appalling behaviour.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that came up, I think, which was super interested, is the whole thing about the arrests of the evading standards was around the CO11 stuff. And then there's a whole thing where he says, that the charges were inevitably dropped. I didn't really understand what
really
was
sarky report. I mean, essentially, he was just pointing out for his managers, like, oh yeah, CO11 fucked up there. Look what mistake they've made. Like, they should have listened to us. Of course, there were going to be payouts. The dumb fucks, basically. And I think it really showed the way in which, I mean, this when we think, like, I always got the impression that when we talked about these internal turf wars that might exist between different government agencies and different parts of the police, that this would be sort of an off the record kind of thing. But we're seeing it there in the reports in detail, you know, basically slagging each other off. I mean, even we were shown an operational document which had come from CO11 about maintaining a database of public order intelligence. And it says that there was no need to record the group affiliations or political persuasions of people involved in public disorder, and that could only be written as a bit of a fuck you to Special Branch about the way that they operate. And it was clear that both these agencies, which, I mean, as activists on the street, felt like the same bloody people, trying to take lumps out of each other. It seems crazy. And I mean, he said a number of times that they feared that CO11 would expose an undercover officer if they knew one existed, which just seems like insane.
I mean, they were as paranoid about getting exposed as we were about being infiltrated. In a way, I think we had a similar level of paranoia. I mean, I think the thing that made me he kept going on about this, you know, that we were 90% lifestyle and 10% political, which is grotesque. Which was also a kind of excuse that he would have to have this kind of role all the time, that he could fall into the role because it was 90%, you know, we were 90%, therefore he would get lost in his role.
Also this cod intellectualism, as if somehow he's read his book, Chin, and he's like, yes, lifestyle anarchism versus social anarchism, an unbridgeable chasm. May I point out that all of you are misunderstanding the correct dialectic. I mean, fuck you, man.
Yeah, and he kept going on about class war. Actually, it was funny. And did class war ever get infiltrated?
Yes, I mean, class war did get infiltrated by a number of different. I should expect. I mean, I was involved with class war at the time. I must confess, I was someone who was going along to these Reclaim the Streets events as a member of class war.
Were you?
I mean, it was all my fault. So, if you're wondering, but moving on from that. No, not at all. No, I mean there was often a line that came from people who didn't appreciate the politics of class war, that claimed we were always being run by the state, because there was a belief that somehow our accelerationist politics was somehow clearly playing into the cops' hands. I think those people's politics are wrong, but that's the nature of it.
I mean, it was kind of scary when he was saying about tweaking plans. He was
very interesting,
talking about the idea that his role was to tweak the plan to make it acceptable to the police in a way where you do feel completely manipulated, and I think that's the.
There was also the street party in Oxford.
Yes,
and his
Halloween.
His disappointment that because they'd managed to, the Thames Valley Police had a laissez-faire attitude, and they thought probably the best thing we can do is to let them have their street party and then peacefully disperse when they're ready to do so. and he said it pulled the teeth of the party. It is literally just a street party, which his visible disappointment that it didn't kick off in a way which allowed the police to wade in was very interesting. And also what you were saying, both of you, about the fit teams. I think there may be, and I don't know if there has been already because I haven't followed all of it, this kind of narrative that, oh, these terrible undercovers were very bad. And we had this squeaky clean forward intelligence team uniform squad who were trying to proportionally police. But no, they were just as bad, and they fed off each other. And I remember numerous times at benefit gigs, they would visibly turn up and intimidate other people coming to the pub and intimidate the landlords into not letting us use the venue again, because you go to your local boozer and there'd be sometimes two very obviously uniformed photographers. They were civilians, but they always had handlers who stuck to them like glue, and they had their uniform forward intelligence team following you around, sticking to you like glue. And you know, they weren't nice. And also the number of times when you'd have some people who'd agreed to do a benefit gig for you, and they'd turn up and they'd be unloading the van and they'd be filmed and photographed, and they wouldn't come back and do a gig. So, you know, I know it's not really directly the remit of this inquiry, but we shouldn't forget how bad the fit team are.
You know, I think that's really important. I mean, I think that, you know, undercover policing does not exist in a vacuum. It's part of a wider infrastructure of repression that the policing has, and forward intelligence teams were, you know, such like, you know, the most visible part of that for us, I think, particularly during that era.
And it helped their legend in a way. You know, the fact that there was always a forward intelligence team probably helped us think we were less infiltrated in a way. I mean,
yes,
definitely.
No, I definitely did think that. I remember thinking that sort of thing. Absolutely, 100%. But I really want to come back to this thing about the tweaking, because I think this is really important, and I think it shows how far we've come in this inquiry. That early on, when officers were being questioned about their role within a group, their role within like directing a group, they were always, you know, there was huge amounts of denial about, oh no, I never expressed an opinion. I would only vote if it was already going very far one way or the other. Otherwise, I'd abstain. And you've got, I mean,
Jim seems to be proud.
Very.
I mean, I think he had a good time, actually. I mean, he says at one point, you know, oh, you shouldn't think it was a party, and we were there for the sex, what he called the Trinity, you know, the sex, the relationships, and doing crime, which he did all three. And he tells us that he's warned by his management that is difficult to avoid. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a sense that he had a good time. He was enjoying it. You could see his him talk about these memories and not denying any of the organizing and using the word "we" all the time.
But particularly on that organizing point, he was like very clear that, you know, he was yes, he was taking part in the discussions, he was arguing for this or for that, and taking a full part in it, and like working out the logistics, working out how, you know, things were practically going to happen, but also like kind of what target should be, and clearly every aspect of that organizational role, something which previous undercover officers have been very reticent to admit to.
But I would even say that he actually is claiming he did more organizing than he actually did. I mean, he did a lot of the logistical stuff. He didn't speak much in meetings. Even in the smaller core group meetings, he never really spoke much. He was quite quiet. He would get stuff done, and that's why people trusted him. But he didn't really have much opinion. So I think he's even lauding his kind of organizational role even more. And then, of course, there's the arrest, which, you know, I mean, and there's a whole, you know, which I think the bar is quite shocked by, of the SDS. He's like really happy that he's arrested. He goes to he goes to court. He lies to the judge in court. He says he's a cleaner. He says he's called Jim Sutton, and Peter Sutton. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's clear that they know that there was a note that where they're seen and enjoyed, because he
the managers are very clear. They it's job well done. You know, congratulations to Jim for pulling it off. That they feel it is furthered his cover. That there's no harm, no foul.
There's these glowing commendations after his been in court and come out of court, and they say of one of his arrests at the London Transport headquarters, it will be of tremendous value in boosting his standing within the group. So, you know, that not in the least bit bothered about their officers making court appearances in their covers. There was also
not being, but they talk about not being, and that comes through in Bishop's stuff as well. That they walk constantly needing to get arrested, but they're trying to find ways of getting arrested and not being charged. And that seems to be the kind of this slightly edgy line that they're gonna.
I don't know how important it is, but also he was being questioned by Barr, the counsel of the inquiry, about passwords.
Yes.
He had the password to the RTS computer, which back in the day would have been some big, heavy desktop thing, held together with sellotape, if I remember correctly, from a few years later.
Yeah.
And they said, did you have any training about the Computer Misuse Act 1990? Because he was trying to say, oh, computers were a new thing. And they weren't really that
they
new.
really weren't.
No,
as someone, he claimed that when he left the special branch, it was the SDS in 2000, they still had a typing pool. He's not sure they were using computers at all. Well, I'm sorry. I was when I was in school in 1995, we were using computers in classrooms. By 2000, I was in university and I was required to submit my essays electronically. This was not the 1970s. But by the late 90s, early 2000s, like the use of computers was pretty much universal. Encarta was a regular learning tool for every educational institution. You were getting CD-ROMs on the cover of most magazines and newspapers, giving you access to the internet. By 97 onwards, the idea that there was something newfangled and confusing by this point about computers is just a dishonest about the history.
I spent a lot of time a couple of years later answering emails on probably the same RTS computer or a similar one, and it wasn't up to sending flyers. People would send you an email with their address and you put a flyer in the post, but computers were a thing. And it seems the counsels of the inquiry was ready and said, did you have any training about the Computer Misuse Act 1990? So there was legislation, there was a framework already. Passwords were identified as a thing that needed some kind of regulation if you were going to be getting them out of people.
It is quite telling how much Boyling tries to pretend that he's both on the cutting edge of computers and understands it before everybody else, but also is remarkably ill-informed about the legislation. Again, he's got that law degree. So many aspects where he's like pretending an ignorance, which I don't think is credible in any sense. Overall, I feel like, as people may be able to tell by my use of language, I would disgusted is not the word. I think particularly because that last half an hour of questioning revolved around the deceptive relationship he had with Monica and the appalling way in which he answered that. It's just so gross. As is always the case with these undercover officers. In so many different ways, because there's the horrific betrayal of so many of us and the movement in general, but like the way in which he tried to excuse his sexual abuse and we know that more is coming in that. We know a lot more is coming in that. There's a great deal more to cover about Boyling over the next 3 days. Is there anything else from this afternoon's evidence that you want to highlight? Just to say, if you are watching, we've got 86 people watching now. Only 4 of you have liked it. If more likes would really, really help. If you are able to share the broadcast, and not just this one, but any of the others, things you might find useful or interesting, or any of the coverage that we did throughout the day. I know that the Campaign Opposing Police Surveillance have been sharing a lot of flyers and videos from Reclaim the Streets. There's a lot of really great footage there. If there's anything particularly you think should be seen further, please do share it. We've had some comments.
Some really horrible ones.
Yeah, there's always horrible ones. We try to ignore those. Jack Shepherd, who is actually, Chris Bryan from the Undercover Research Group, who's often on these videos, was on the early video today, saying it's great analysis. Thanks, Chris.
There was kind of
we're talking about history. That's why we've mentioned AOL. Go on. Sorry, Jay.
The interesting, I wasn't aware that there was an Enviro desk for Special Branch.
Yes.
That came out. Maybe we all knew that, but I didn't know that. I don't know if you knew that. And this whole thing of, uniform not being told at this stage, and this is going to come up again.
Yes.
That was something around the much social justice And he was like, oh yeah, but sometimes he kept going on, the plans change, it's in flux. Direct action is always in flux. And maybe we didn't want to tell Uniform because the plans would change. I mean, I imagine, is that another thing around CO 11 and Special Branch?
I mean, there's certainly some sort of level of
but-
contempt towards Uniform in general from Special Branch. The idea that you wouldn't want to bother their little heads about anything complicated because we don't want to tell them twice. Because if you tell them twice, they'll get confused and they might think it's the original set of information when in fact it's the secondary set.
Yeah. And then he said often these events are badly policed.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was so much so that he said, when it was about the occupation of the former Department of the Environment building, that he said, well, I wasn't sure if it would go ahead or not because it could have been, the police could have done a bad job. But as it was TSG who did it, so it was done properly. And this deference towards certain units and not others.
He said there was some when it got quite technical about CO11 and their liaison and the sort of rebranding of a unit as, was it CO11 or SO12?
So that was a letter from CO11 to SO12. I mean, I think Barr brought that up because we just heard Boyling being so dismissive of CO11, and it was like, oh look, they sent a letter thanking you personally. And I mean, they don't know about his existence, and he underlines, or they wouldn't know who it was, but they were thanking the source that was responsible for the information which led to. And there's this was by him. It was communicated to him at the time. We've heard from many previous officers saying, oh, you wouldn't get thanked. You wouldn't get a pat on the head. There was Lambert says, "Oh, you would never know if your work was thought good or not." But we hear from Boyling, yes, you would. I mean, he was shown these minutes from meetings. He said that letter was on his file. So I mean, not just that he'd seen it; he was familiar with it. He was knew exactly what it said, and we saw that throughout a lot of these notes, which previous undercover officers had claimed were like a surprise to them. He's like, "Oh yes, I was familiar with that. I read that at the time."
But he also said later on, CO11, which is the public order section, uniform section. He said, I only met them when I got arrested by them or when I got my vehicle stopped, with the sort of disdain which he often seems to have for activists as well.
I mean, there was a feeling in Special Branch that these officers who had taken on a lot of public order policing around football and other sort of settings, non-political settings, were trying to muscle in to their territory. And it's so bloody weird, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? These are both taxpayer-funded institutions that are meant to be doing ostensibly the same job, and they're falling out with each other rather than doing their job.
Yeah, and also he tried to revisit this thing about reclaim the streets, don't seek to create disorder, and he sort of said, well, they seem to be quite happy if there was, and when he was challenged on that, he rode back a bit, but then he come back to it and said, but reclaim the streets themselves don't foment or seek to create disorder, but there's always these people that come along that could cause trouble, and then he seems to contradict that by saying, well, the plan was to let them do their thing because that was the least disruptive, and then let them go. And he seems to be sort of struggling to reconcile those two, I think.
There was a lot. I really felt there was two beasts inside Jim Boyling that were arguing with each other quite a bit throughout the whole process.
Yeah, it's like a dream. Yeah, I mean, I think the guy, it's not surprising these guys get, anyone doing that job is not going to go crazy. I think they've all lost it. They all lost it, and you have to have lost it to do the job in the first place.
Well, I mean, I was just going to come back to that. The very first thing that Barr opened with this morning was something which Jim Boyling wrote in his written statement, saying that he was attracted to the role because it gave him the opportunity to live to live as if he had taken a different path in life. That it was an existential opportunity,
a different version of myself.
Right,
the line he also used.
And he went in wanting that. Is it any wonder that he got that?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to say, Jim, this wasn't just some fucking cosplay for your existential philosophical experiment. I mean, these are people's lives that you're destroying. These are movements you're destroying, movements that could have made way more difference in the world if you hadn't fucking destroyed them. Yeah.
So another comment from Chris. Jack. I mean, he uses the pseudonym Jack Shepherd for no good reason. I thought it was quite interesting. They pulled up that about Roger Geffen using false names for no apparent reason. People do that. Suspect that the undercovers getting beaten up by uniform may have coloured their view of them. I mean, yeah. I mean, that is actually. I mean, we know of several undercover officers who did get beaten up by public order police.
Yeah, sadly, no one ever beat Jim up. But.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add? There are many more days of hearings to come. I'm aware we've been doing this for half an hour now. If there's anything else you'd like to add, or anything you're hoping to hear tomorrow, or will you be back again tomorrow?
I think tomorrow we're going to hear about the turf war between the Met and the City Police and JOT, and I think that's what we're going to hear about.
I'll be here tomorrow,
yeah. June the 18th, Carnival Against Capitalism. I think a seminal moment in the lives of any activist who was involved with it. Certainly something which had a big impact on me. Look forward to hearing that. If you are able to come down, it is very easy to attend. You need to you don't need to have booked. Come down. ID. Some photo ID. You don't actually technically need it, but it will speed up the process enormously if you've got some. You have to submit to a search. But please come down.
And he did end by saying, your whole life is a deceit. It's not a very healthy or authentic way to exist, which I thought, I don't know, it's kind of, the fact that they're themselves saying that it's not a healthy thing, I think it's kind of moving in a funny kind of way. I mean, just realize, the state destroys everyone, even cops. I mean, all cops are bastards, as we know, but, it's a destructive machine.
There was a bit of a poor me at that, because it was at a point where he was being asked about the way in which he deceived Monica and denied her informed consent before having sex with her. And I mean, his attempt to shift that into, well, my psychological problems, just like, go fuck yourself, bro. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll be doing a video before the hearings start in the morning. People seem to like that. I'm going to do more of those. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye for now. Oh, I won't be doing the Twitter Spaces this evening. I've stopped doing them, but I will be doing a large one at the end of the week, covering the whole week. So please tune in for that. I'll put a reminder out for that later on this evening. Cheers for now.